Welcome to your Time Management Revolution. This is Time Management Fixer Helene Segura. In today's episode, I'll be sharing a previously recorded interview during which we're discussing time management and mind management. Enjoy!
At age 56, I feel better than ever. I walk 8 miles to work, practice yoga, and paddleboard on weekends with my husband. I'm also a GNC store manager. When customers ask how I do it all, I tell them that GNC vitamins and supplements really help. Our formulas are the highest quality, made with some of the best, most effective ingredients, guaranteed. Now, some of GNC's best wellness products are buy one, get one half off. Which ones are right for you? Just ask. We make it simple. Visit GNC or GNC.com for details.
It's time for Money for Lunch, where we feed your brain and your business with supersized portions of business and financial news. Now your host, Bert Martinez.
What up, Money for Lunch? Hey, good to have you guys here. It's, what do you call it? I think that this is probably going to be one of the better interviews to really get you started off on the right foot, right? So my first guest is a productivity coach, and excited to have her on the show. Why? Because really productivity is all, it's all, you know, to me it's what it's all about, right? I mean, check this out. Sometimes we think of productivity just as a work thing, but it's not always a work thing. It could be, you know, it could leach out into other areas of our lives, right? So anyway, so we're going to be talking about productivity. We're also going to be talking about the economy. Is it doing good? Is it doing bad? Anyway, we're going to be talking with Greg Mila about that. And then we're also going to be diving into some career marketing, because that's also very important, right? Anyway, so our first guest, Helene Segura, she's a sought-after productivity coach. Like I said, I'm so excited to have her here because this is such an important thing. And her latest book is The Efficiency Assassin. I just love that. The Efficiency Assassin. And anyway, Helene Segura, a sought-after productivity coach in a wide variety of professionals, is the president of the International Board of Certification for Personal Organizers, also a member of the National Speaker Association. Her website, Helene Segura, Helene, Segura, Segura.com. Helene Segura, welcome to Money for Lunch.
Thank you very much, Bert. Glad to be here.
And did I get your name right?
Yes, sir, you sure did.
All right. Hey, good. All right. So, you know, as I was saying, productivity is not just about business. Even though most people think about it just as a business thing, what is your thought? Do you think that productivity is adaptable to other areas of life as well?
Absolutely. I think that productivity and time management are all about mind management. And whether we're at work or we're at home or we're out playing somewhere, we need to make decisions about how we're going to use our time. So productivity applies to more than just work.
I like what you just said. Time management is about mind management. Is that right?
Exactly, because we make a decision about how we use our time. We decide if we're going to procrastinate. We decide if we're going to allow ourselves to be interrupted. And we decide whether or not we're going to work ourselves to the bone or we are going to spend time with our loved ones instead. So time management truly is all about mind management. It's about those decisions.
I love it. I love it. Man, there's a phrase that pays today. Time management is about mind management. I love it. I love it. And during this segment, because I love this phrase so much, I'm going to give some of our listeners an opportunity to get some good swag here if you take action. So stand by. We're going to have some fun today. So let's talk about this. I think the most precious resource is time, right? I mean, the time is the one thing that can make or break us. It's the one thing that we can't make any more of. And yet, many of us feel we never have enough time. And so how do we get over that hump? How do we get some of our time back?
The first thing you need to do is decide on what your priorities are, because so many times we just react to what's been thrown in front of us, and we automatically jump on that task thinking, oh, it's put in front of me. I guess this is what I need to do now. But if we instead take a step back and we understand what our top priorities are in our personal life and what our top work responsibilities are, we'll stay focused on what we need to get done, so that way we can keep things in perspective and we won't feel so frazzled, because we'll know what's important, what do we need to work on, and we can let the other things slide until the next day or the day after that.
Got it. I got it. You know what? And that is so true. So many of us get to the office or even get to the house and we're being thrown at all this junk. And I like this idea of just taking a couple of minutes and realize, okay, what is really important, what is urgent, what is necessary versus what can we put off for later, the next day, the next week. And it's an amazing thing. You have to make these decisions, and I'm gonna give you a personal story. My kids, I have a couple of kids in junior high school, and bless their hearts, on a regular basis they were forgetting a book. They were forgetting a piece of homework. Hey, can mom or dad bring this stuff over? Can somebody help us out here? Now, we have a set of twins, so it was always one or the other on a daily basis, literally on a daily basis, trying to rob us of our time is the best way I could put it. So we finally made this decision. If you forget something at home, we will not bring it to you anymore. But mom or dad, we're going to get, they'll punish us. We will stay after school. Yes, that's okay with us. Stay after school.
And that's a choice. That's a choice that they have to make.
Yes.
Exactly.
So we got our time back, and guess what? They occasionally forget something, and occasionally they do get penalized by staying after school, and that's just the world we live in. And I throw this out there as a personal example because sometimes we, as you said, we get thrown all this stuff, we react to it, but we made this choice to stop reacting to it. All right, so let's talk about this. My office is a mess. And I know, and you cover this in page 82 of your book, so I want to dive into this. So when my office is a mess, and everybody has this gross feeling, where do I start?
The first thing you want to do is start with your immediate work area, because chances are there are some types of important papers or important pieces of information there that you're working on. So you want to make sure that those are in an absolutely safe place. And then set aside time for dividing up that area into a checkerboard. So just picture all of those black and white squares. And you work on a checkerboard at a time, deciding, do I need to keep material or this piece of paper? If I do, what category does it go in? Is it for a client? Is it for marketing? And you're going to make a bigger mess first before things get better, but you categorize those papers or those objects that you have in your workspace so you at least know what your inventory is. And then once you realize what your inventory is, you can place it strategically around the office so it's where you can easily grab it and therefore easily put it back.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you know what? And this is something back to the whole mind management thing. This is something that we're in control of. We can decide in advance what to do with this piece of paper. Are we going to file it or throw it away or act on it later? And then if you're going to act on it later, you can schedule that. Listen, I got to review this letter from so and so, versus just adding a pile and adding a pile and adding a pile, and then you can't find anything.
Exactly. I have a colleague of mine, Barbara Hemphill, and she says that clutter is delayed decisions. So just like what you were talking about, we're in charge of deciding where these papers or where these supplies go. And what we need to do is be intentional. So instead of just setting something down on our desks or in our workspace, quote unquote, for now, we need to decide, is this its permanent home, or where do I need to put this so I can find it again? Because tomorrow when I walk in, I don't want to see that pile here. I want to be able to concentrate and not see things scattered around my space.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. All right, so let's talk about Opportunity's Natural Assassin. When you talk about Opportunity's Natural Assassin, what are you talking about?
Well, that actually goes back to procrastination. Some people say that procrastination is opportunity's natural assassin because when we procrastinate, then we let those opportunities slide. We're allowing those opportunities to be annihilated. And when you look at psychology research, which only a nerd like I would do, Psychology tells us that procrastination is the act of wanting to feel better now. So as adults, procrastination is our version of a 3-year-old's tantrum. You know, when your little 2 or 3-year-old says, I don't want to. That's what we do as adults when we procrastinate. And the negative effect of procrastination is that we throw a lot of opportunities away because we chose to do something easier or something more fun instead of facing that tough decision or that tough project that's right in front of us.
I like that. So how did you word that? It's our wanting to feel better now.
Yes, that is what procrastination is. When you filter it all down, procrastination is when you want to feel good now. So if you don't like what you have in front of you, the task, the project, whatever it is, you'll go do something else, like grab your phone and check social media or check email, because to your brain, that's a lot more fun than having to make a hard decision.
That's right. Absolutely. I love that. All right, stand by. We're going to take a quick commercial break to make us all feel better now, and then we'll be back right
Welcome
after
back
this.
To Geico Radio. It's savings on the radio.
Call us, Steve. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just got a free rate quote on Geico.com. Saved a ton, and it only took me 5 minutes and 12 seconds. I was wondering, is that some sort of record?
That's a good question. Let's have a look.
Not quite. Someone's got you beat by 8 seconds.
Still, I mean, that's quite fast.
Well, what if I told you I only use one hand?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch. And check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.
All right, we are back. We're hanging out with productivity coach Helene Segura, talking about the Inefficiency Assassin, her latest best-selling book, available on Amazon. And as I mentioned to our listeners, if you go and buy the book today and you send it to me, we'll hook you up with some swag or some free gift. I have a publicity course to help you get tons of free publicity. Or if you don't want that, then I have maybe some gift cards to Subway and some other things that you might like instead. But go out and get this book. And again, I'm not getting a commission or anything from Helene or from Amazon, just that this book will help you immensely, and we're all about helping you. All right, so let's talk about this, because you mentioned grabbing our phone and you know, you're texting or you're checking social media. So let's talk about technology versus productivity. How to meet in the middle by getting organized and staying organized versus, again, getting lost in texting and social media.
Yes. So you were asking about technology and how do we balance out being more productive and also using technology. Well, it's very important that you understand that technology is a tool. Technology is not our boss. So our brains and our decisions need to drive our day. It shouldn't be this little device that's in our handbag or in our pocket beeping and chirping at us, telling us, hey, check me right now. So we need to decide what times of the day we're going to be checking in on texting and emailing, and also letting the people in our lives know that, hey, if I'm going to have this meeting today, then I'm going to be 100% present with the person who's in front of me, and I'm not going to check my phone. So you might get my voicemail. So let's go back and use that 20th century invention of voicemail. So many of us are afraid of missing out on the next opportunity that we lose the opportunities that are right in front of us when we let technology take over.
Yeah, I love that idea. When I have a meeting, nothing annoys me more than people checking their stuff. And I try to have short meetings. I try to make them entertaining. But you know what? It has gotten to be almost an addiction, a habit, really, that if there's silence or an awkward or anything like that, instead of being present, it's let's look down and pretend that we're doing something on our phone.
Exactly. And I know this is going to seem pretty hokey to some people, but I think that a lot of us are afraid of being silent and being by ourselves. They're scared of what they might find out about themselves. And one of the most empowering things you can do is just sit for 1 minute in silence and know that you do not have to check your phone to feel like a whole person. You do not have to post anything on social media for the next 60 seconds to feel like a whole person. You just need to build up that confidence to know that you're in control of your life, and it's okay if you're not at the beck and call of your devices.
Man, I love that so much. I think that's absolutely correct. There is an essential characteristical flaw if you cannot be silent and by yourself, for a minute or 3 or 5 or 10. If you always have to be validated by the phone, then you really need to check that out. All right, let's talk about this. Top 3 things that my audience can do today to make better decisions and implement them in the workplace.
Number 1, you want to decide on what those priorities are that I mentioned earlier. So what are the top 3 priorities in your personal life? What are the top 3 work responsibilities, your goals in your job or in your career? Because if you understand what those are and you view them every single day, literally a list of those priorities, then you're more likely to focus during the day and not get thrown off by distractions and procrastination. Number 2, at the end of the day, before you close out from work, you want to decide what your top 3 tasks are for tomorrow. So before you clock out for the day, before you check email first thing in the morning, you want to know what you need to get done tomorrow. And not the to-do list that's a million miles long, that's so unrealistically long you're never going to do it. Just those top 3 tasks that will keep you from getting in hot water or possibly might get you ahead of the game. And then step 3 is schedule those tasks onto your calendar for tomorrow. So in between your meetings, whatever you have going on, when are you going to work on those tasks? So that way, when somebody drops into your life, either physically or virtually, and they ask you to do something right then and there, you can look back at your calendar and say, well, I'm supposed to be working on this task, and that will help you to say no or to delay what's been put in front of you because you understand what needs to get done.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Again, the book is called The Efficiency Assassin. The Efficiency Assassin, available at Amazon or wherever good books are sold. And again, if you buy the book today, if you buy the book, let's say in the next day or 2, we'll give you some swag here from Money for Lunch, some goodies that we have, and that way it will help you to better run your life and your business. And Helene, I would love to bring you back and talk more about how to be more productive and talk about your book some more.
Absolutely. And next time I will use a more efficient phone so that way I don't keep cutting out.
All right. Well, Helene Segura, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing.
Thank you so much, Bert. I appreciate it.
You bet. Good stuff there. Just a lot of great tips on how you can be more productive. And what's the phrase that we learned here today: time management, mind management. It's really all about that mind management. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back.
Did you bring the camera phone?
I did.
Do you want to go first?
I've been waiting for this all day.
Okay, this is Rose and Stacy.
Introducing Chase Quick Deposit. Just photograph the front and back of your check using the Chase mobile app on your iPhone and hit send.
It went through?
So cool.
This is so cool. You want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, it was nice.
Make a deposit from anywhere, anytime with your iPhone.
To Mr. and Mrs. Walker, why would they send my parents a check?
Chase what matters.
I'm not sure what it is. I guess I'll be okay.
I'm calling the studio, Matthew. You're not shooting today.
Just get some rest.
He bought it.
Hi, can I get my CRV brought up, please?
Roderick. Roderick. Life is packed with things you have to do.
But sometimes you gotta live a little.
Matthew, you poor thing. You sound awful.
How could I resist?
Look, I don't know what to tell you. He's sick. Actors get sick sometimes.
Thanks. Have a good night. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Get going in the all-new CRV from Honda.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch. And check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.
All right, we are back. Greg Melia, president of Melia Advisory Group, Advisors Academy, board member of Melia Advisory Group. They understand the market cycle, and they are prepared to properly equip people with investments that provide income, protect their assets, and give them peace of mind during this time of economic turmoil. Greg Melia, welcome to Money for Lunch.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, so let's talk about this. What happens to mortgage debt? Let's talk about this.
Mortgage debt is, when you have a husband or wife. There's two events, of course. A typical mortgage is co-owned by a spouse, and when both die, then that estate is going to owe that debt. Now, the good thing about a typical, like 30-year, 20-year mortgage, is they'll give you plenty of time to work with that. As long as you continue to make payments. They know that you're going to go through a process and you're going to sell the property and probably satisfy the debt. And they're not too worried because they actually have, a piece of property they're backing that loan. So they have a lot more patience for you. It's kind of interesting, though, with the equity lines of credit, they're not so lenient. They can actually get pretty serious about asking for those funds pretty quick.
Interesting.
And can actually... Yeah, they're treated differently than the typical 30-year, 20-year long-term mortgage.
The other thing when you were talking about those home equity lines of credit, those HELOs, is the other thing that came up was those nasty homeowner association. They're not very lenient either.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those guys either.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's true.
The only thing I can think of is that Satan made up that whole industry, the homeowner association, because those guys are absolutely evil, and you've heard about all the stuff they do. We'll save that for another time. But anyway, okay, so all right, so in a scenario like that, the mortgage debt, you have time to figure out what's going to happen. The estate can deal with that. What happens to credit card debt?
That's a great question, Bert. I mean, there's we do a lot of estate planning here, and it's one of the questions that we get frequently is, what happens to all the debt that occurs, when somebody passes on. Credit cards even more interesting. If there's, a husband and wife and they both pass away, then the estate, the executor is supposed to notify them of the debt, and then they are to pay that debt off from the proceeds of the estate. If there's no cash left over, then it's a write-off. They can't go any further than that. That is not passed on to the kids in any form or shape. Now, what's kind of interesting about that one is, let's say you have most of the estates in an IRA or a 401k. Now, that's fairly common, and that has beneficiaries on it. Well, that gets paid out. That does not go through probate. So there could be a $500,000 estate, and it gets paid out in the form of beneficiaries through the IRA, the 401k, and the credit card company still didn't get paid, and they have no recourse.
Yeah, that's not the worst thing I've ever heard.
Which part?
the credit card not getting not getting paid. I mean, again, it's just one of those things that it's not the worst thing for a credit card. I mean, look, credit card companies for the most part do a very good job. My credit cards, the ones that I operate with, have been great with customer service. I do want them to get paid everything that they're justly due, but at the same time, hey, it's not the worst thing in the world if they don't get paid. These guys still make crazy profit, and so again, not the worst thing that happens. But there's a lot of good news in what you said, in the sense that debt is not passed on to the heirs. It's not passed down to the kids, and depending on how you have your estate set up, it may not be encumbered at all, right? Because if it's in an IRA or some other device, then they're just the credit card people are just SOL.
Yep, it's paid out directly to the heirs or who are the beneficiaries you have on the 401k or the IRAs. There's another interesting twist when it comes to credit cards too. It has to do with a husband and wife. Now let's say now both. You have a husband and he has a credit card in his name. He acquires debt on that credit card, and he passes. In most states, the wife is not required to pay that. Now, now, if it's a joint account, and this is where, if you have a credit card held in a joint account and the wife is the joint, then yes, she is obligated to pay that. Now, they may, for sure, will probably hassle and try to bully the person. There's you'll find stories where people are being bullied by not paying that. So if you're in a community state, and that's where it also is different. If you live in a community state, then the wife is required. There is no out for her. So if it's a community state, she's got to pay the debt. If it's not a community state and it's a credit card just in his name, she cannot pay it, and they are supposed to write that off. Again, that doesn't mean they won't try to come over, try to dink the credit, but she's not required. They can't come after her personally to make her pay that.
Well, and then the other thing is everything's negotiable.
Correct.
Right? I mean, so if you're in a community, go ahead.
I just to say, you just got to watch it in a community state. You do not have that option. You are obligated for the debt. But it's important information. If you have somebody out there, husband dies, the credit card is in his name only. Now, again, it can't be in her name. It's got to be strictly. Now, if you're just a signer, there's a difference between a signer and an owner. If you're a co-owner on that debt, then you are obligated to pay it. But it could be important information for some of your listeners that have, a husband dies suddenly, there's credit card debt in his name, and she really doesn't have the money to pay it. Well, she can legally not pay that. And is there a pretty quick way of finding out whether you're in a community state or not? Yeah, I think there's really only a handful. I think so. There are 10. I think there's 10. Texas, I know, is a community state. You can find out. Just simply get online and Google and see if you are what community states are there. I think there's 7 to 10. There's not. The majority are not going to be community states. That I know for sure. Gotcha. Yeah, you're right. It isn't that hard. You just go to Google and say, is my blank state, a community property state or something like that. It's pretty easy to find out. Let's talk about this. Student loans. In a scenario where you have student loans, walk me through that. Well, I've got, that's interesting that there's actually a lot more. We do a lot of work with seniors in retirement, and you'd be surprised the number of seniors today went back in 2009 after the crisis and got educated, got some form of education and have college debt. So it's a kind of a bigger issue for seniors today than it ever has been before. But that also, too, the federal is pretty clear on this that if you have a student, that it is to be wrote off. It is not to be passed on to any heirs. It is debt that is forfeited.
Interesting. Okay, good. And then, we talked a little bit about what happens with we touched on the equity, on the home equity line of credit, but what happens with this? Because you said that they were a little bit more aggressive and they had a little bit more rights. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's not so much. I think it's a second-tier position of debt, so they can get a lot more forceful and could try to press you into selling to get that debt satisfied. Where you're going to have a lot more leniency with the 20-30 year loan, and you really have the same scenario with your cars too. Your car debt, and that's not something an obligation is carried on to the heirs as well. The car loans, typically they also are not, as long as you make payments, they're probably not going to say much either, because they also know they have an asset, and it'll be, what'll happen is if there's no money and nobody wants to buy the car, they'll just simply foreclose on the car or repossess it, and then they will, satisfy that debt through the repossession.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where what I said earlier, everything's negotiable, meaning, look, if you tell somebody, look, my spouse just died, can we work out something on the car? I would think that they would be glad to work something out. Maybe they give you a $1,000 discount if you pay it off, or maybe they give you time to refi it or whatever, or just take over the car note, or the same thing with the credit card debt. Even in a community property state, your husband just passes away or your spouse just passes away, nothing prohibits somebody from trying to negotiate a better deal with the credit cards. It's what happens in bankruptcy court, right? Sometimes, depending on which bankruptcy court you're going to walk into, credit cards are all flexible when it comes to getting something versus nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely, you'd want to get into some form and talk to the creditors right away and tell them your situation and negotiate with them. I absolutely agree with that. You'd want to do that.
So let's talk about this real quick. When it comes to the kind of work that you do, the asset protection work that you do, who are your typical type of clients? Because when people hear about estate planning, they obviously go to celebrities and the wealthy and stuff like that. So who are your clients?
Well, that's a great question, Bert. The thing that I do there's some workshops I do on estate planning, and it's kind of interesting. You'll be shocked the number of people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and actually have nothing in the way of estate planning. And sometimes people think, well, they really got to have a large amount of assets before they do that. That really is wrong and incorrect. It is, some of the expenses you can get into by not having proper estate planning is unbelievable. Simple things like having a living will. Often, I know in the state of Oklahoma, it's doctor's prerogative. If you have a spouse ends up in a coma, and there's no brain activity. I actually had this happen to one of my clients, and there's no brain activity. And you tell the doctor to turn off the machine because that was the wish. You and husband and wife agreed you wouldn't spend any time on a ventilator with your brain being inactive. And in the state of Oklahoma, if it's not you don't have the legal document, it's doctor's prerogative. So he gets to override the decision of the spouse if it's not if your wishes aren't down, in some form of a living will. And which results the survivor, actually having to go to court and spend literally thousands of dollars to get a judge to override that doctor. It can be an expensive thing. So even if you have no estate, if your listeners out there and there's not in a big estate, not a large estate there, you still got to make sure you get the basics taken care of, like living wills. Bert, a durable power of attorney is another critical document. We're talking about debt and finance here today. If you don't have a durable power of attorney, and you become incapacitated due to illness or accident, and something happens, somebody's going to go to court, probably spend upwards close to $10,000 doing what they call a living probate to get some type of authority awarded on their behalf so they can take care of your affairs. And so you might be, somebody out there, maybe they've got an estate, a house. It doesn't take much to get $300,000 or $400,000 in an estate. You had a home in there, a couple $100,000, maybe $100,000 savings. You're at $300,000. And so often we think that we don't have much in the way of assets, and so we don't get the estate planning. Well, durable power of attorney becomes of need, and here you spend $10,000 just to take care of the affairs. It's So again, really critical that you make sure you get that stuff taken care of.
Well, absolutely. Look, there are several high-profile cases that deal with probate, and so here's the deal. This is the thing I learned when I went to law school many years ago, a lifetime ago, that if you have a will, and a will is better than nothing, but it's not much better than nothing, but it is. So if you have a will, it will go to probate. It will cost you a lot of money to manage your estate because the government steps in via probate. The wills are one of the most contested documents out there, and the what you were talking about, these fees add up a lot. These fees can take a modest estate of $100,000, and before you know it, that $100,000 is worth $50,000. And if you just do a little bit of research on Google about high-profile wills and probate costs, you will see that I think Elvis Presley, when he passed away, was worth $5 million. And by the time it went through, his will went through court and probate, it was down to about $2 million. Of course, now he does about $2 million or $5 million a year because of all the different recordings and the the family estate continues with Memphis. His home out in Memphis. But a lot of people who have not taken, as you suggested, minimal protection can really cost you tens of thousands of dollars. I think the example that you gave there about having to fight your doctor to take your spouse off of a ventilator, again, that could easily be a $10,000 ordeal.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and you're right in the probate with the will too. I mean, at least I can speak to the state of Oklahoma without, in fact, that's true I think everywhere. But anyway, the wills have to be probate. So sometimes people think, well, I don't have a big enough estate, but there are tools out there if you want to avoid the probate process that can be used. Some states even have something. What really comes to, I hear all the time, Bert, is they'll tell me, well, I just don't have much, and so probate's not an issue, and they don't realize just because they have a will, the fact that it will be probate, and there's thousands of dollars will be spent to probate that will. And you have tools out there, even like a payable on death deed that some states have adopted that will pay the real estate is always, as you know, is where the cause of probate comes in. The titleable assets, real estate, bank accounts, and so forth. That's where you run into probate. And so, like the home can be taken care of through a payable on death deed, which diverts. Now, I'm still not a big fan of them. There are other tools I prefer, but at least it would avoid the probate process for the kids.
Yes, and let me tell you, even and I'm glad you brought that up. Even if it costs you nothing to go through probate, putting your family through that process is terrible. Having to go to court. We went through this with my mom. She had a will. We ended up going to court multiple times. It took 2 years, maybe 3. I know it was at least 2 years, maybe 3 years before it went through the process. And she had a very modest estate.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying is true because I see it firsthand. I completely agree with you. I have this conversation frequently with some classes, some materials I teach, is that you run into issues with the family who has to pay the real cost. I mean, it's like if the gentleman I mentioned earlier, his wife had stepped out of the shower and she collapsed, got to the hospital, and she was brain dead. Here he's struggling with one of the greatest probably crises he's ever faced in his life, is having his wife, in intensive care. And he's having an argument with the doctor, and the doctor's refusing to agree with him, and then can imagine him having to go to court at that point. And it just takes a crisis and multiplies it by a factor of 10. And going to court and getting attorneys and getting a judge to override the doctor. I mean, court dates, which are, it's an extensive affair that it really hassles the people that are left behind. Which is one of the big reasons, Bert, I highly recommend everybody look at their estate plan, because don't leave a mess for your kids. I've had to clean up, in my world, I've had to clean up a lot of messes in estate planning, and it's just such a hassle. And if it's done right, it's so nice to not have to struggle like that. Absolutely.
Greg, we're out of time. I want to say thank you so much for stopping by. great information, and looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you for having me, Bert. Appreciate it.
You bet. Good stuff there about protecting your estate, protecting your loved ones. And look, guys, I'm telling you, it isn't very expensive to put some protection into place, and it's going to really be helpful. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be talking to Susan Spalding, 30-plus year career in marketing and management. Man, I cannot wait. We'll be right back.
Did you bring the camera phone?
I did.
Do you want to go first?
I've been waiting for this all day.
Okay, this is Rose and Stacy.
Introducing Chase Quick Deposit. Just photograph the front and back of your check using the Chase mobile app on your iPhone and hit send.
It went through?
So cool.
This is so cool. You want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, it was nice.
Make a deposit from anywhere, anytime with your iPhone.
To Mr. and Mrs. Walker, why would they send my parents a check?
Chase what matters.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch. And check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.
All right, we are back. Susan Spalding, as I mentioned right before the break there, 30-plus year career in marketing and management consulting, brings together her hallmark curiosity about how things work and how her savvy on human behavior. She leverages insights, ideas, strategies for helping others create an inspiring future for themselves and their business. Susan knew that the silver tsunami of retiring baby boomers meant that millions, literally millions, are asking some tough questions. What do I do after I retire? How can I prepare my business for a successful handoff? Can I reinvent my career? Her expertise and experience offers top leaders strategic paths for navigating the challenges of leaving behind a business and finding success in what she calls Life 2.0. Susan Spalding, welcome to Money for Lunch.
Thank you, Bert. I'm happy to be here.
The book is called Recalibrate for Life 2.0, Transition Stories for Business Leaders. I love that, recalibrate, because that's really what that's what we're constantly doing.
It's certainly what we should be doing. Sometimes we do it without a plan. And the more we can do it with the plan, the better.
Yes, I agree. I would say 90% of the time it's probably without a plan. It's, oh, wow, I can do this. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about this. I always ask my authors, why this book? What prompted you to write the book Life 2.0?
And in my case, I didn't start out planning to write a book about Life 2.0. I was in the middle of trying to figure it out for myself. But being a constant observer of the marketplace, because that's my history in marketing, is market research, I started having lots of conversations with people as I was figuring out my own Life 2.0 after selling my business, and it was so interesting that the business leaders in my community and elsewhere wanted to sit down and have coffee with me and learn about my story and how I sold my business and what I'm doing now. And very quickly in the conversation, I realized they weren't interested in my story. They were interested in their story. And how to figure out how to exit themselves. So it was just so curious that so many conversations ended in that discussion of how should I think about Life 2.0. But I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I had to explore this whole phenomenon, this whole tsunami effect that's happening to business owners and business leaders and many, many other people in terms of how they're handling what's next and defining what's next.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot because it's something that came out of your own organic experience and you as you said, you had to answer it for yourself, and I think that's we call it a great way to write a book. I think it's a great way to figure it out for yourself. At the same time, you figure it out for other people. Let's talk about this. What has been the biggest surprise as you talk with all these business leaders about recalibrating their life?
I think it's the question that they have for themselves in terms of who am I without this business or without this career that I've been involved in for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. That to me was the really big surprise of how uncertain people were with how to even remotely answer the question that they knew was going to be posed once they retired of what do you do? And they didn't want to hear, oh, you're not worth anything, because that's what they hear when somebody asks, what do you do, and you don't have a ready answer. They wanted to figure out, so what am I going forward, and who am I going forward? And very successful people seem flummoxed by the whole idea of thinking about themselves as individuals and separately and creating if you will, a brand and a story about themselves. And by doing that begins to help them direct a plan of action and identify those things that they might want to recalibrate.
Yeah, no, I love that. What's interesting, my brother was looking to, he got an offer on his business, and it was a fairly good offer, and he was considering taking the offer to get out and retire. And he would have retired at a fairly early age. I want to say, 48, between the age of 48 and 50, somewhere within that neighborhood. So it would have been a nice retirement. And he, so I asked him, so what are you going to do next? I mean, if you get all this money, then what are you going to do? And he had no answer. He couldn't figure out what he was going to do. And so I said, well, if you can't figure out what you're going to do next, then why sell your business? I mean, there's no point. I mean, if he would have said, well, you know what, I want to go on this world tour, I want to do this, I got these 10 things on my bucket list I want to accomplish, then of course that would have been great. But he had nothing, and so bottom line is he ended up not selling his business.
Oh, that is such a perfect example, and that's a fair decision, and a decision that many people should make. There's others that may make a different decision. In my book, and talking with the 14 executives that I profile in the book, each one of them have a little bit of a different story, like your brother. So, one example, a person who worked for a very large organization hit his retirement and decided to exit, and then decided, this is no fun. I am not going shopping all day long or sitting by the pool all day long or, of course, all day long. That gets old very, very quick. So he started, he hung out a consulting shingle. Never any experience with consultants before, other than not liking them as part of his corporate gig. And then he realized, well, wait a minute, maybe I could be the consultant that I would have liked, and that's what I'm gonna pursue. And he's really happy doing 2 or 3 consulting assignments at a time, while he intermixes that with being able to do a lot of things that he didn't have time to do before. Or another person who was a lawyer and law firms are acquired and acquired and acquired just like other firms, and he had kind of gone through that enough times. And so he took a totally different angle and looked for a nonprofit. He'd always been very, very present in the community, and so he thought, he could apply his leadership skills that way. And in that particular case, he pursued becoming an executive director of a small nonprofit and is thoroughly enjoying that play. Whereas another one said he was a banking president, and he was very interesting. He worked on his transition from the moment he joined as the president of that organization. So for 10 years, he knew exactly when he was leaving. That doesn't happen very often. Mostly you're unprepared.
Right.
But he had a plan, and he worked that plan, and he exited with a very specific definition of, again, volunteering his time back into the community where he had been helping people anyway in the urban core of how to develop their financial situation in a stronger, better way. So he immediately had identified a way to start giving back. And there's just stories and stories and stories about different ways that people decide to experiment. And, I think that's probably the key thing here is to remember to give yourself permission that you don't have to have it all figured out.
Right.
You don't have to have a great big vision, and that you can experiment. Have 2 or 3 or 4 things that you want to try, and see what really fits your personal interests and skills and so forth.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great, and I like what you're saying there. First of all, give your permission to try 3 or 4 things, and at the beginning of the segment, you talked about having a plan. I think that's so crucial. Most of us are so used to having a plan. We all kind of have a plan. You go to school, you get this education, you're going to have a career path, and that one's sometimes that's written down, sometimes that's just kind of loosely verbalized. But having a plan always helps. And I think that's one of the great takeaways I've gotten from some of the examples that you've given there is that the guys who had a plan, seem to have done better. Let me ask you this. What's your take? When should business leaders begin to think about a succession plan or exiting the company?
I think sooner than anybody does. It seems like especially the silver tsunami group of boomers, their whole beings have been so focused on work and defining themselves through work that they didn't really give themselves time to think about what's next. So I think it would be great if we actually could put it in our mindset that this is part of life, and actually a really great part of life, and one that we should enjoy and plan for and build towards and adjust our planning and our thinking and our thoughts as we go. So if you own a business, as an example, and you're going to sell your business at some point or move it to the next generation, it's not too soon to start preparing 3 to 5 years in advance. I think most people don't start early enough, so don't know if they have quite all their ducks in a row for selling that business. And so there's a whole lot of hurry up and wait while they do get their ducks in order. And while they're preparing their business, they should be preparing themselves. And it's not oftentimes that you're thinking about yourself individually and your business to make sure you're getting the most value for your business. You're leaving your business in a really strong position, so it's a wonderful legacy for yourself, and it will continue forward. But you're also thinking about yourself and how to make sure what's next is really successful, however you want to define success and happiness. From a corporate executive standpoint, I think that can vary. But again, it's important to know I'd say 2 years out to begin thinking about what you want to do and where you want to go probably gives you a good running start.
Right. Right. And it's one of those things, too, that, when you start thinking, hey, 2 years out, 5 years out, whatever, it seems sometimes like that's a lot of time. But we all know, especially as we get older, I mean, here we are. The first quarter of this year is blown by.
It has.
Now, it's one of those things where the older we get, the faster time moves. And so if you are thinking, hey, I got 10 years to go or 20 years to go, I agree with you. Planning now is probably not a bad idea. At least, if you're 20 years out, so you sit down and you plan out some big strokes. If you're 10 years out, maybe you're planning, you're gonna make a more concentrated effort, start sketching in some details. You're 5 years out, you better maybe get some help.
Yeah, and one of the things that's really easy to do is to just start working on your own, if you will, brand plan, and take inventory or keep your inventory up to date. And by that I mean reflect on the assets and skills that you've been building over your entire career, and think about out of that set of skills and expertise, which ones do I want to continue to do something with? And then move beyond those functional kinds of things and really think about your passion and where are your interests. Because like you were saying earlier, Bert, it's you have a plan, you go to school, you have a career, you raise a family. Those are very functional, goal-oriented kinds of things that you're going to do. So how do you move beyond those aspects and think about some things maybe you've always wanted to do, but you've never really had the time or the extra energy or the ability to do that until now. So it's an interesting time period where you can reflect and say, I've wanted to do that since I was 10 years old. I'm going to put that back on my list. So, think about your passion as well. And then as you think about those assets and skills and passions and interests, then the possibilities start really opening up where you can start to think about what you want to do and what you want to stand for. And I come back and I talk about how you blend your purpose and your passion and your personality, and that all begins to help you define what's next. I can give you a few examples in terms of some of the folks that I've talked to and where their brand promise developed. So
Susan, Susan, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to say thank you so much for stopping by, and then we'll have you back again to talk some more about Life 2.0. Let me give out the book title one more time. It's called, here it is, Recalibrate for Life 2.0, Transition Stories for Business Leaders. And you can check out more about Susan in her book at recalibrate.com. Recalibrate.com. Susan Spalding, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Bert.
You bet. Good stuff there. We're all constantly recalibrating. We're all constantly having to make adjustments. Remember, you were created to succeed.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch. And check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.
That's what my unpredictable hair sounded like before Frizz Ease. Sound familiar? We'll stop the crunchiness and celebrate your curls with Frizz Ease Air Dry Waves. It gives you defined, touchable waves with soft, feather-light movement. No heat required and no frizz. And that's the sound you'll hear and feel with your defined, touchable waves from Frizz Ease. Frizz Ease Air Dry Waves, only from John Frieda.